The space around Jupiter's largest moon erupted in brilliant flashes of light. One by one, massive ships began to appear from nowhere. Each vessel stretched for miles, their surfaces gleaming like polished crystal under the distant sun. The ships moved with perfect precision, forming neat rows that extended far into the black void of space. On the bridge of the lead vessel, Admiral Kexthera stood tall on his 6 legs, his blue-scaled skin reflecting the glow of the command screens. His large eyes watched the small blue planet in the distance with satisfaction. After traveling for 3 standard cycles across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Grand Fleet had finally reached this primitive system. "Communications officer," the Admiral spoke in his deep, commanding voice. "Begin the standard first contact protocol. Make sure these creatures understand the power they now face." The communications officer, a smaller Zephyrian, with nervous movements, activated the long-range transmitters. The message that went out had been used successfully on over 200 worlds. It never failed to bring immediate surrender. "Primitive inhabitants of this star system," the Admiral's voice boomed across all radio frequencies, "you now stand before the might of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. We are your superiors in every way. Our technology surpasses your wildest dreams. Our military strength could crush your entire civilization without effort. You will surrender all territory and resources immediately, or face complete destruction. You have one of your planetary rotations to respond." The Admiral sat back in his command chair, confident in the effect his words would have. Every species they had encountered so far had responded with either terrified begging or desperate attempts to flee. Some tried to fight, but those conflicts rarely lasted more than a few minutes. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2 hours. Finally, a crackling voice came through the communications system. It sounded casual, almost bored. "Hey there, space folks. This is Captain Jake Morrison on the mining ship Lucky Strike. Got your message loud and clear? It's a pretty impressive light show you put on out there. You guys need any help with directions? Or maybe some fuel? We got a nice little truck stop on Europa if you're looking to stretch your legs." The bridge fell silent. Admiral Kexthara stared at the communications panel as if it had grown a second head. This was not the response they expected. Did he just ... The communications officer started to ask. "Ask us if we needed directions," the Admiral finished, his voice barely a whisper. Before anyone could respond, another human voice came over the radio. This one belonged to a woman who sounded like she was trying not to laugh. "Jake, you can't just invite the scary space aliens to Europa. You probably don't have the right permits." The woman paused, and they could hear her taking a sip of something. "This is Commander Lisa Brady at Luna Defense Command. We received your message, Admiral. Very dramatic. Did someone write that speech for you, or do you come up with that stuff on your own?" Several Zephyrian officers looked at each other in confusion. The Admiral's scales changed from blue to a darker purple, a sign of rising anger among his people. "How dare they mock us?" he growled. "Do they not understand what they face?" The communications officer cleared his throat nervously. "Perhaps they do not comprehend our technological superiority, eh? Should I send them detailed scans of our weapons systems?" Before the Admiral could answer, a new voice joined the conversation. This one belonged to an older human male who spoke with calm authority. "This is Admiral Pete Collins, Earth Defense Command. Thanks for stopping by our neighborhood, Admiral Kexthera. We don't get many visitors from outside the local systems. Your ships are quite pretty, very shiny. My grandson would love to see them. He collects pictures of spaceships." Admiral Kexthera felt his careful control slipping away. "Your grandson collects pictures?" "Oh, yes. He's 8 years old. Loves anything that flies. He's got models of ships from all over human space. Bet he'd want to add yours to his collection. Would it be okay if I sent him some photos?" The Zephyrian Admiral looked around his bridge at his confused officers. In 300 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. These humans were treating the most powerful military force in the galaxy like visiting relatives. "Captain." Morrison's voice came back over the radio. "Admiral Collins, you should probably mention the barbecue this weekend. I'd bet our new friends would enjoy some good Earth food." "That's a great idea, Jake. Admiral Kexthera, we're having a colony celebration on Saturday. Nothing fancy, just burgers and corn on the cob. You and your people are welcome to join us. Fair warning, though, my wife makes potato salad that could probably power one of your ships. The communications officer leaned toward his admiral and whispered, "Sir, are they inviting us to a social gathering?" Admiral Kexthera stood up from his command chair, his full height making him tower over his crew. His scales had turned almost black with frustration. "Enough of this nonsense," he shouted into the communications system. "We are not here for your food or your children's pictures. We are here to conquer your pathetic civilization. Do you not understand the concept of superior military force?" There was a pause on the human side. Then Admiral Collins spoke again, and this time his voice carried a hint of genuine puzzlement. "Superior military force? Oh, you mean like a war thing?" The human admiral sounded like someone had just explained a complicated math problem to him. "Why would you want to do that? War is terrible. Lots of people get hurt, property gets damaged, paperwork takes forever, plus it's really expensive. Do you have any idea how much it costs to replace a good spaceship these days?" Commander Brady's voice joined in again. "Admiral Collins is right. War is such a hassle. It's all that shooting and exploding and yelling. Much easier to just talk things out like civilized people." Admiral Kex thought, "What is it you actually need? Maybe we can work something out without all the dramatic conquest stuff." Admiral Kexthara felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. These humans were not afraid of him. They were not impressed by his fleet. They were treating him like a neighbor who had asked to borrow their lawnmower. "We need territory," he said, though his voice had lost much of its commanding tone. "Resources. Our population requires expansion space." "Oh, is that all?" Captain Morrison sounded relieved. "We got plenty of empty planets around here. Most of them are pretty nice once you get the terraforming equipment set up." "Why didn't you just ask?" The Admiral sat back down in his command chair, feeling very much like the universe had suddenly stopped making sense. 3 days later, the neutral space station Harmony Point buzzed with activity. The station had been built years ago as a meeting place for different species to conduct business and diplomacy. Today, it would host the most unusual first contact. Meeting in galactic history, Ambassador Velinara stepped off the Zephyrian transport ship with great ceremony. She wore the traditional robes of her office, deep purple fabric embedded with glowing crystals that showed her high rank. Behind her, a parade of Zephyrian technicians carried their most impressive technology displays. The plan was simple, and had worked on every world they had visited. Show the primitive species advanced Zephyrian technology. Watch them gasp in amazement and fear, accept their immediate surrender. Move on to the next world. The docking bay was surprisingly quiet when they arrived. A few human workers were moving cargo containers, but they barely looked up at the impressive Zephyrian procession. One human, a woman in work clothes, gave them a friendly wave. "Welcome to Harmony Point," she called out cheerfully. "The meeting room is down the hall to your left. Coffee machine is on the right if you want some." Ambassador Velinara was taken aback. Where were the nervous officials, the armed guards, the crowds of curious citizens desperate to see their advanced visitors? In the meeting room, 3 humans sat around a simple metal table. They looked up as the Zephyrians entered, offering polite smiles like they were greeting old friends. "Ambassador Velinara, I presume?" Middle-aged human man stood up and extended his hand. "I'm Sam Rodriguez, Chief Engineer for the Titan Mining Consortium. This is Dr. Amy Foster from the Mars Science Institute, and Captain Rick Stone from the merchant vessel Big Dipper." The ambassador stared at the offered hand, unsure what to do with it. These were the representatives of Earth's government. They looked like ordinary workers, not the desperate leaders of a doomed civilization. "I am Ambassador Velinara of the Zephyrian Empire," she said in her most formal tone. "I have come to demonstrate the technological superiority that makes resistance to our rule impossible." "Sounds interesting," Sam said, pulling out a chair for her. "Always like to see how other folks solve engineering problems. What have you got?" The ambassador gestured to her technicians, who began setting up their first display. A sleek, crystalline device hummed to life, projecting a glowing energy shield in the air. "Behold," Velinara announced proudly, "our personal defense barrier." It can stop any projectile weapon and absorb energy blasts that would destroy entire buildings. No species we have encountered possesses anything that can penetrate this shield. The three humans leaned forward to get a better look. Sam pulled out a small device that looked like a flashlight and pointed it at the shield. Numbers appeared on its tiny screen. He said, studying the readout. That's a pretty decent field generator. What's your power efficiency rating?
Power.
Efficiency? The ambassador repeated, confused by the question. Yeah, how much energy does it take to run? This looks like it uses about 40 kilowatts for a standard humanoid-sized barrier. That's not bad, but it seems like overkill for most situations. Dr. Foster nodded in agreement. The field density is interesting, but it's uniform across the entire surface. You could probably cut your power consumption in half with a dynamic distribution system. Ambassador Velanara felt her confidence starting to waver. These humans were supposed to be amazed by technology far beyond their understanding. Instead, they were talking about it like mechanics discussing a car engine. Perhaps you would like to see our weapon system, she said. Signaling for the next demonstration, the technicians wheeled out a device that looked like a metallic tree with glowing branches. Energy crackled between the branches as the weapon powered up. Our plasma cannon, the ambassador announced. It can destroy any vehicle your species has ever built. The energy output is beyond anything in your primitive arsenal. Sam walked around the weapon, examining it from different angles. He pulled out a small tablet and ran some kind of scan. Oh, this is like our old Marks of N series, he said with a smile. We used these about 30 years ago, before we figured out how to make them more efficient. He reached into his equipment bag and pulled out a device that was half the size of the Zephyrian weapon. It looked almost like a toy compared to the impressive alien cannon. This is our current standard plasma rifle, Sam explained. Principle is yours, but we solved the energy waste problem and the cooling issues. Watch this. He aimed the small human weapon at a metal target that had been set up for testing. The weapon fired with barely a whisper. But the target didn't just get destroyed, it simply vanished, leaving only empty air where solid metal had been. Molecular disintegration, Sam said casually. Much cleaner than just melting things. Less mess to clean up afterward. The Zephyrian technicians stared in shock. Their most powerful weapon had made an impressive light show, but the human device had completely erased the target from existence. How is this possible? One of the technicians whispered. Dr. Foster looked up from her tablet, where she had been taking notes. Oh, that's just standard engineering. Once you understand quantum field manipulation, this stuff becomes pretty straightforward. The hard part was figuring out how to make the power cells small enough to fit in a handheld device. Ambassador Velanara's scales began to pale. She gestured frantically for her technicians to bring out their final demonstration. The gravity drive that powered their massive fleet. The device was beautiful, a sphere of polished metal that floated in the air, surrounded by rings of energy. It was the pinnacle of Zephyrian science. The technology that had allowed them to travel between the stars and build their empire, our gravity manipulation system, she said, though her voice had lost its confident tone. It allows us to bend space itself to our will. Surely you have nothing that can match this level of advancement. Dr. Foster examined the floating sphere with professional interest. She walked around it, taking measurements with her instruments. Interesting approach, she said thoughtfully. You're using direct gravitational field manipulation.
We tried
that method about 15 years ago, but it was terribly inefficient. The power requirements were enormous. Captain Stone, who had been quietly observing until now, spoke up. We switched to quantum resonance fields back in '75, much more efficient. And you don't have to worry about the gravitational side effects. Want to see our latest ship drive? He activated a small holographic projector that showed a sleek human ship. The vessel was smaller than the Zephyrian craft, but it moved through space with impossible speed and agility. This is the Wanderer, Stone explained. She can cross the galaxy in about 3 weeks. The new quantum drive doesn't just bend space, it folds it. It's much faster than traditional gravity manipulation, and it uses about 1/10 the power. Ambassador Velanara sat down heavily in her chair. Everything her people had achieved, Everything they were proud of was apparently outdated human technology. The weapons that had conquered hundreds of worlds were inferior to tools that humans considered routine. "I don't understand," she said, quietly. "If you possess such advanced technology, why do you live on just a few worlds? Why haven't you built a galactic empire?" Sam looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Why would we want to do that? We've got plenty of room in our own system." Building an empire sounds like a lot of work, and frankly, most of us are too busy with our own projects. Dr. Foster nodded in agreement. Plus, managing other people's planets would be a nightmare. Can you imagine the paperwork? I'd rather spend my time doing research. Captain Stone laughed. "I can barely manage my own ships. Crew, running a galactic empire would drive me crazy within a week." The ambassador looked around the room at the three humans, trying to understand how a species with such incredible technology could be so completely uninterested in conquest and power. "What do you do with your advanced capabilities?" she asked. "Mostly, we just try to make life better for people," Sam said with a shrug. "Better tools, better medicine, better ships. It's nothing too exciting. We explore," Dr. Foster added. "There's so much to learn about the universe. Every star system has something new to discover, and we help people," Captain Stone finished. "Transport goods, deliver supplies to remote colonies, that sort of thing. It's a good life." Ambassador Velinara realized that she was facing something her people had never encountered before, a civilization that had no interest in dominating others, despite having the power to do so easily. It was the most terrifying discovery of her entire career. Fleet Commander Zargoth floated in his command chair, his tentacles writhing with frustration. The reports from Ambassador Velinara had been disturbing. These humans claimed to have superior technology, but claims were easy to make. How real military. "Power required proof, Commander," his tactical officer reported. "We have reached the asteroid field near the fourth planet. The humans have agreed to meet us here for the demonstration." Through the massive viewing screen, Zargoth could see the field of floating rocks. Some were as small as houses, others as large as cities. It was the perfect place to show these boastful humans what real destructive power looked like. The human ship that approached was laughably small compared to the Zephyrian dreadnought. The vessel looked more like a cargo hauler than a warship. Its hull was painted bright yellow with red stripes, and someone had written "careful wide turns" on the side in large letters. "That is their military vessel?" asked the tactical officer in disbelief. "It appears so," Zargoth replied, equally puzzled. "Perhaps they are as primitive as we first thought." A cheerful human voice came over the communications system. "Good morning, Fleet Commander. This is Colonel Dan Miller aboard the escort frigate Steady Eddie. Beautiful day for a demonstration, isn't it?" Colonel Miller Zargoth responded formally. "You are about to witness the true power of the Zephyrian Empire. Prepare to be amazed by forces beyond your comprehension." "Looking forward to it," the colonel replied. "We brought some snacks if anyone gets hungry later." "My wife packed sandwiches." Zargoth decided to ignore the bizarre comment about food. He turned to his weapons officer. "Target the largest asteroid. Prepare the main cannon for maximum power discharge." The dreadnought's primary weapon was a marvel of Zephyrian engineering. The cannon ran nearly the entire length of the ship, powered by 3 fusion reactors. When fired at full strength, it could crack the surface of a small moon. Energy built up along the weapon's length, creating a brilliant display of lights and crackling power. The charging process took several minutes, during which the entire ship hummed with barely contained energy. "Firing solution locked," reported the weapons officer. "Fire," Zargoth commanded. The main cannon released its fury in a beam of pure destruction. The energy blast struck the target asteroid with tremendous force, instantly vaporizing millions of tons of rock and metal. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star, sending shockwaves rippling through the asteroid field. When the light faded, nothing remained of the target but glowing dust and debris. It was the most impressive display of raw firepower that Zephyrian science could produce. "Magnificent," Zargoth declared. "Let the humans witness what awaits any who dare to oppose us." There was a brief pause before Colonel Miller responded. "Wow, that was quite a light show. Very impressive. Must have taken a lot of power to charge up that cannon." Indeed, Zargoth said proudly. The energy output was equivalent to a stellar flare. Nothing in your primitive arsenal could match such devastating force. Well, it was certainly loud, the colonel agreed. Our turn now. Lieutenant Kate Johnson, would you mind taking care of that asteroid cluster over there? A younger female voice came over the radio. Sure thing, Colonel. Just give me a second to line up the shot. Zargoth looked through his viewing screen at the human ship. He expected to see weapon ports opening, or energy building up like his own ship had done. Instead, the small vessel simply drifted closer to a group of asteroids without any visible preparation. What are they doing? The tactical officer asked. I don't see any weapons charging. Maybe their technology is too primitive to detect. Zargoth suggested, though he was beginning to feel uneasy. Shot away, Lieutenant Johnson announced casually. Something small launched from the human ship. It was so tiny that the Zephyrian sensors almost missed it. The object looked like nothing more than a metal cylinder about the size of a person. That is their weapon? Zargoth asked in confusion. It looks like a cargo container. The small missile reached the asteroid cluster and simply disappeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the asteroids began to fade away like morning mist. There was no explosion, no flash of light, no dramatic display of energy. The rocks simply ceased to exist, molecule by molecule, until empty space remained where solid matter had been moments before. The silence on the Zephyrian bridge was complete. Every officer stared at their instruments, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Sensors show complete molecular disruption, the science officer reported in a shaking voice. The asteroids were not destroyed. They were erased. Erased? Zargoth repeated. The matter was converted directly to energy at the quantum level. Nothing remains, not even atomic particles. Colonel Miller's voice came over the radio again. Sorry about that, folks. That was just a standard ship-to-ship missile. We've got bigger weapons if you want to see something really impressive, but we'd have to clear everyone out of the area first. Safety protocols, you understand. General Roy Parker's voice joined the conversation from another human ship. The colonel's right about safety. Our heavy weapons have a tendency to affect space-time in unpredictable ways. Last time we used one. For a demonstration, it accidentally created a small wormhole. Took us 3 days to figure out how to close it properly. Zargoth felt his confidence crumbling like sand. His people's ultimate weapon, the pride of their military technology, created an impressive explosion that left debris scattered across space. The human weapon had erased matter from existence so completely that their sensors couldn't even detect trace elements. How is such a thing possible? He whispered. Oh, it's not that complicated once you understand quantum mechanics, Lieutenant Johnson explained helpfully. The tricky part was making the warheads small enough to fit in our standard missile tubes. The engineering team had to completely redesign the containment system. Containment system? The Zephyrian tactical officer asked weakly. For the antimatter reaction, she replied as if discussing the weather. You have to be really careful. With the magnetic bottles. One small mistake, and boom, there goes your whole ship. We lost a few test vessels during development, but we figured out all the safety issues eventually. General Parker chuckled over the radio. Kate makes it sound easy, but the physics involved would give most people nightmares. At the power calculations alone require supercomputers just to keep track of all the variables. Your standard weapons use antimatter? Zargoth asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Just for the small stuff, Colonel Miller replied. The big weapons use more exotic physics. Vacuum decay, temporal shears, that sort of thing. But we rarely need anything that serious. Most problems can be solved with conventional antimatter warheads. The commander looked around his bridge at his officers, all of whom appeared to be in various stages of shock. The humans were casually discussing weapons technology that made their most advanced systems look like children's toys. Commander. His communications officer said quietly, Perhaps we should reconsider our approach to these humans. What do you mean? Zargoth asked, though he suspected he already knew. If their standard defensive weapons can erase matter from existence, what do you think their actual military arsenal looks like? The thought sent a chill through every Zephorian on the bridge. They had come here expecting to demonstrate their superiority to a primitive species. Instead, They had discovered that the humans possessed casual, destructive power that defied everything they thought they knew about the limits of technology. Colonel Miller Zargoth said carefully, "May I ask what purpose such powerful weapons serve? Surely you do not face enemies that require such extreme measures." There was a pause before the colonel answered, and when he did, his voice had lost some of its cheerful tone. "Actually, Commander, that's exactly why we developed these weapons. There are things out there in the dark between stars that make our little demonstration look like a firecracker. We learned a long time ago that if you want to keep the peace, you better be prepared for the worst possible war." The implications of those words settled over the Zephyrian bridge like a cold shadow. These humans weren't showing off their military might for conquest or intimidation. They were sharing a glimpse of weapons designed to fight battles that the Zephyrians couldn't even imagine. The Zephyrian research team landed on the human colony world of New Austin with great expectations. After witnessing the terrifying weapons demonstration, they needed to understand how such a militaristic species functioned in daily life. Surely, a civilization capable of erasing matter from existence would be organized. Like a vast military machine, Commander Thechville led the research team through the colony's main street, his recording devices capturing every detail. He expected to see armed soldiers patrolling the streets, military checkpoints, and fearful citizens going about their business under constant surveillance. Instead, he found Sheriff Ben Clark sitting on a porch playing chess with an elderly human, while children ran around nearby laughing and chasing each other with toy spaceships. "Excuse me, Commander," Thechville approached the sheriff cautiously. "Are you the military commander of this settlement?" Sheriff Clark looked up from his chess game and smiled. "Military commander." "Nope, just the sheriff. I keep the peace and make sure nobody parks their hover car in front of the fire station." "You must be one of our alien visitors. Welcome to New Austin. But who maintains order? Who enforces discipline among your population?" The sheriff scratched his head, looking puzzled. "Well, most folks just follow the rules because they make sense. If someone causes trouble, we talk to them. If they keep causing trouble, they have to do community service. Works pretty well most of the time." Commander Thechville was confused. "What about military training, weapons drills, preparation for battle?" "Oh, we don't do much of that here," Sheriff Clark replied. "This is a farming colony. Most people are too busy growing crops and raising families to worry about fighting. Why would we need weapons drills?" Before the commander could answer, a commotion started down the street. Mayor Susan Walsh was standing in front of the town hall, waving her arms and arguing loudly with a group of colonists. "There she goes again," Sheriff Clark said with amusement. "The town council is arguing about fixing the potholes on Maple Street. Been going on for 3 months now." Commander Thechville watched in amazement as the mayor and the colonists engaged in a heated debate about road maintenance. These are the same people whose weapons could destroy entire fleets, and they were arguing about holes in the street. "This is your government in action?" he asked. "Yep," the sheriff replied proudly. "Democracy at work. Everyone gets to have their say, even if it takes forever to actually fix anything." A young human woman approached the group of aliens. She had paint on her clothes and wore a friendly smile. "Hello there," she said cheerfully. "I'm Mary Thompson, the school teacher. Would you like to visit our school? The children would love to meet real aliens and learn about your homeworld." Commander Thechville stared at her. "You want me to speak to your young ones?" "Of course, education is very important to us. The kids have been asking questions about your ships ever since you arrived. They're very curious about how you travel between stars." The commander found himself being led to a small building where 30 human children sat at desks, their eyes wide with excitement. These were the offspring of a species that could erase matter from existence, and they looked exactly like any group of curious youngsters. "Class," Mary Thompson announced, "these are our visitors from the Zephyrian Empire. They've traveled very far to meet us." A small boy raised his hand. "Do you really have 6 legs? Can you run faster than humans?" A girl in the front row asked, "What does your planet look like? Do you have oceans like Earth?" No, Commander Thechville spent the next hour answering innocent questions about his homeworld, his people's culture, and their long journey through space. The children listened with fascination. asking thoughtful questions and drawing pictures of his descriptions. When the school visit ended, he felt more confused than ever. These children showed no signs of military training or aggressive behavior. They were simply curious about the universe around them. Walking back through the colony, Commander Thishwell encountered Tony Garcia, a mechanic who was working on a hovercar in his garage. The man looked up as the aliens passed by. "Hey there," Tony called out. "You folks having any trouble with your shuttle? I noticed some wear on your engine housings when you landed. Could take a look if you want." "No charge. Just curious to see how alien technology works." "You would repair our vessel for free?" the commander asked in surprise. "Sure, why not? I love working on new tech. Plus, it's the neighborly thing to do. You're visitors in our town." Commander Thekvel watched as Tony examined their shuttle with professional interest, pointing out minor maintenance issues and offering suggestions for improvements. The humans seemed genuinely excited about the engineering challenges involved. Later that evening, the research team attended a community barbecue in the town park. Families gathered around picnic tables while children played games and adults shared food and conversation. The aliens were welcomed like old friends, with everyone eager to share their local specialties and hear stories about other worlds. Dr. Helen Brooks, the colony's anthropologist, sat with Commander Thechvel as he struggled to understand what he was witnessing. "I do not comprehend your society," he admitted. "You possess weapons that could destroy entire star systems, yet you spend your time arguing about street repairs and playing with children. How do you maintain such destructive power without becoming a military dictatorship?" Dr. Brooks smiled as she watched a group of children teaching some young Zephyrians how to play soccer. "That's exactly why we can maintain such power," she explained. "We make scary weapons so we can live boring lives. The better our defenses, the less we have to think about fighting. But surely such weapons require military discipline to control. Who decides when to use them? Same people who decide everything else around here. We vote on it. If enough people think something needs to be blown up, then we blow it up. And if not, we find another solution." Commander Thekvel felt his understanding of civilization cracking apart. "You allow ordinary citizens to make decisions about weapons of mass destruction? Who else would we trust?" Dr. Brooks asked simply. "These are the people who have to live with the consequences. A farmer knows better than a general whether his crops are worth fighting for. But what if they make the wrong choice? Then we live with it and try to do better next time. That's how democracy works. It's not perfect, but it's better than having one person decide everyone else's fate." The commander watched as Mayor Walsh approached their table, still carrying papers related to the pothole debate. "Sorry to interrupt," she said to Dr. Brooks, "but the council finally reached a decision about Maple Street. We're going to fix the potholes next week." "It only took 3 months," Dr. Brooks said with a grin. "Democracy is slow," the mayor replied, "but at least everyone got heard." As the evening continued, Commander Thekvel observed humans engaging in activities that seemed completely at odds with their military capabilities. They discussed art, music, and philosophy. Parents helped children with homework. Teenagers complained about curfews. Elderly couples danced to old songs. None of it made sense according to everything the Zephyrians knew about powerful civilizations. These people should be warriors, conquerors, rulers of the galaxy. Instead, they were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers who happened to possess the most advanced military technology in known space. "Your people confuse me greatly," the commander finally said to Dr. Brooks. "How so? You have the power to rule the entire galaxy, yet you choose to grow vegetables and argue about street maintenance. Why do you not use your abilities to build an empire?" Dr. Brooks looked out at the peaceful gathering around them before answering. "Because this is what we're fighting to protect," she said quietly. "All the weapons, all the technology, all the preparations for war. It's all so that people can have barbecues and worry about potholes. The moment we stop being the kind of people worth defending is the moment we lose everything that matters." Commander Thekvel realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization that had achieved ultimate power and chosen to remain humble, a species that could destroy anything but preferred to create and nurture instead. It was the most terrifying discovery he had ever made. Admiral Kekstara floated in his command chair, reviewing the disturbing reports from his research teams. 3 weeks of studying human civilization had only deepened the mystery. These creatures possessed technology that could reshape reality itself, yet they spent their days teaching children and growing flowers. The Admiral was still trying to process this contradiction, when his sensor officer's voice cut through his thoughts with urgent alarm. Admiral, multiple contacts approaching from deep space. Massive energy signatures. Unknown configuration. Keksathara's attention snapped to the main display screen. At the edge of sensor range, dark shapes were emerging from the void between stars. Even at this distance, the readings were terrifying. How many ships? He demanded. Thousands, sir. No, tens of thousands. The computer cannot get an accurate count. They appear to be increasing in number as they approach. The shapes on the screen grew larger and more distinct. They were not ships in any conventional sense. Each craft looked like a massive geometric puzzle made of black metal, constantly shifting and reshaping itself. As they moved, smaller vessels seemed to split off from the larger ones, creating an ever-expanding swarm. By the void, whispered the communications officer, it's them, the Devourers. Every Zephyrian on the bridge felt their blood turn cold. The Devourers were the reason their fleet had fled to this remote corner of the galaxy. For 300 years, this mechanical plague had consumed star systems across their home region, turning entire civilizations into raw materials for their endless reproduction. Send immediate distress signals to all human vessels, Admiral Kekstara ordered. Tell them we request immediate alliance and protection. Offer them tribute, technology, anything they want. The sensor readings continued to climb as more enemy ships appeared. The swarm stretched across space like a metallic cancer, blotting out the stars behind it. Admiral, the tactical officer, reported with barely controlled panic. Preliminary scans indicate over 50,000 vessels. Each one shows the same configuration as the ships that destroyed the Kepler colonies. Admiral Kekstara remembered the recordings from Kepler. Entire planets stripped bare in days. Populations of billions reduced to component atoms. The Devourers consumed everything. Ships, stations, planets, even the metal and asteroid fields, and used the materials to build more of themselves. A calm human voice came over the communications system, completely at odds with the crisis unfolding on the sensor screens. This is Captain Frank Miller aboard the human vessel Relentless. We received your distress call, Admiral. Looks like you folks are having some trouble with uninvited guests. Captain Miller, Admiral Kekstara, said desperately, you must evacuate this system immediately. Those are Devourers. They have consumed dozens of star systems. Nothing can stop them. It will destroy everything in their path. Captain Miller's voice remained utterly calm, as if he were discussing the weather. Haven't seen that model before? Janet, what do you think? Another human voice joined the conversation. This is Commander Janet Lewis. I'm running tactical analysis now. Standard swarm configuration, self-replicating technology, typical hive mind control structure. Looks like a Tuesday to me, Frank. Admiral Kekstara stared at his communications panel in disbelief. Did she just say this looks like Tuesday? Admiral Kekstara, a new voice joined the human conversation. This one belonged to Admiral Chris Evans from the Human Fleet Command. Don't worry about those ships. We'll take care of this little problem. All human vessels implement standard anti-swarm protocol. Try not to scratch the paint. A little problem, Admiral Kekstara repeated in shock. Admiral Evans, you do not understand. These creatures have destroyed entire sectors of space. They cannot be reasoned with or defeated. They consume everything. Yeah, we've dealt with their type before, Admiral Evans replied casually. Self-replicating machines, right? They eat planets and make more ships? It's pretty standard cosmic horror stuff. Give us about an hour and we'll have this cleaned up. The Zephyrian Admiral watched his sensors in amazement as human ships began moving into position. There were only about 200 human vessels compared to the 50,000 Devourer craft. But the humans showed no signs of fear or even concern. Admiral, his tactical officer said quietly, the human ships are not even raising shields or powering weapons. Are they planning to surrender? Before Admiral Kexera could respond, Captain Miller's cheerful voice came over the radio again. "All right, people, you know the drill. Standard formation, minimum safe distance from each other. Remember, these self-replicating types can be tricky. Don't let any pieces get away, or we'll be doing this again next month," Commander Lewis added. "Weapons are charged and ready. Anti-replication field generators are online. Temporal anchors are in position. All systems show green across the board." "Anti-replication field generators?" Admiral Kexthara asked weakly. "Oh, that's just basic equipment when dealing with self-replicating enemies," Captain Miller explained helpfully. "Prevents them from making more ships during battle. Otherwise, the fight could go on forever." "Temporal anchors. Those stop them from escaping into different time streams," Commander Lewis added. "Some of the smarter hive minds try to retreat into the past or future when they realize they're losing. The anchors keep them locked in the present so we can finish the job properly." Admiral Kexthara realized that the humans were discussing technology and tactics that were completely beyond Zephyrian understanding. They spoke of manipulating time and space as casually as his people discussed engine maintenance. "Admiral Evans," he said desperately, "please let us help. Our ships may not be as advanced as yours, but we can provide support."
"That's very kind of you, Admiral."
"But you should probably move your fleet back about 50 light minutes.
Our weapons
Have a tendency to affect local space-time, and we wouldn't want any of your people to get caught in the temporal distortions." "Temporal distortions? When you're dealing with enemies this large, you need weapons that can affect multiple dimensions simultaneously," Admiral Evans explained patiently. "It's very effective, but it makes space get a bit wonky for a while afterward." The Zephyrian fleet hastily moved to what they hoped was a safe distance. Watching in awe as the human ships prepared for battle, there was no ceremony, no dramatic speeches, no last-minute preparations. The humans approached the greatest threat in galactic history, like they were going to exterminate insects in their garden. "All ships, this is Admiral Evans. Commence standard pest control operations. Try to keep it clean, people. I want to be home for dinner tonight." Sensor officer looked up from his instruments with wide eyes. "Admiral, the Devourer fleet has begun attacking. They're moving at maximum speed toward the human ships." Admiral Kexthera watched the tactical display as 50,000 enemy vessels rushed toward 200 human ships. It should have been a massacre. The Devourers had never lost a battle, never retreated, never shown mercy. Instead, Captain Miller's voice came over the radio, sounding slightly bored. "Well, here they come. Same old tactics. It's no creativity at all. Steve, would you mind taking care of the first wave? The rest of us will handle cleanup." "Sure thing." "Frank," replied Captain Steve Rogers from another human ship. "Standard molecular disintegration pattern or something more creative. Dealer's choice. Just try not to create any black holes this time. The paperwork is terrible." Admiral Kexthera realized he was about to witness either the end of human civilization or something beyond his ability to comprehend. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The Devourer swarm filled space like a plague of metallic locusts. Millions of geometric ships stretched across the void, each one constantly reshaping itself as it consumed debris and built new weapons. The mechanical hive mind had devoured entire civilizations to reach this size. And now it rushed toward the tiny human fleet with unstoppable hunger. Admiral Kexthera watched from his safe distance, his entire crew silent with dread. The recordings from destroyed worlds played in his memory, cities stripped to bare rock in hours, populations converted to raw materials for the endless swarm. No force in the galaxy had ever slowed the Devourers, much less stopped them. "Captain." Steve Rogers aboard the human ship Relentless sounded like he was ordering lunch instead of facing galactic annihilation. "All right, people. Standard formation. Remember to keep your reality anchors active. Last time someone forgot, we ended up with that whole time loop situation. Engineering was not happy about fixing that mess." The first wave of Devourer ships reached the human fleet. Thousands of enemy vessels opened fire with weapons that could crack planets, filling space with enough destructive energy to sterilize solar systems. None of it touched the human ships. The attacks simply stopped existing when they came within a few miles of the human vessels. Energy beams vanished, missiles disappeared. Even the space around the weapons seemed to forget that attacks had ever been fired. "Nice try," Captain Rogers commented mildly. "Janet, would you mind returning the favor?" Commander Janet Lewis activated something that made reality hiccup. The front ranks of the Devourer swarm simply stopped being there. Not destroyed, not vaporized, not reduced to atoms. They had never existed in the first place. "Causality bombs are so convenient," she remarked. "Much cleaner than regular explosives." Admiral Kexthera stared at his sensors, which showed readings that made no sense. According to his instruments, 10,000 enemy ships had been erased from history itself. The space they had occupied now contained nothing but background radiation from the birth of the universe. "How is that possible?" his science officer whispered. The Devourer hive mind seemed equally confused. The remaining ships paused their attack, clearly trying to process what had happened to their missing units. Their perfect coordination faltered as they encountered something beyond their programming, Captain. Frank Miller's voice came over the radio, cheerful as ever. "Oh, they're the thinking type. That's cute, Mike. Want to show them the quantum virus?" "Happy to," replied Captain Mike Davis from another human ship. Uploading now. Something invisible spread through the Devourer swarm. Like wildfire, ships began turning on each other, their perfect unity dissolving into chaos as the hive mind fought itself. Entire sections of the fleet started dismantling themselves, using their own materials to build weapons aimed at their former allies. "Are they doing?" Admiral Kexthera asked in amazement. "We gave their computer system a logic puzzle it can't solve," Captain Miller explained. "The virus makes them think every other ship in their fleet is an enemy to be consumed. They'll tear themselves apart trying to figure out who to attack first." While the Devourers destroyed each other in confusion, the human fleet moved forward with casual efficiency. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were being eliminated by weapons that defied every known law of physics, Captain. Rogers fired something that folded space inside out, turning enemy vessels into geometric impossibilities that collapsed under their own twisted dimensions. Commander Lewis deployed reality distortion fields that convinced enemy ships they were made of different materials, causing them to fall apart when their metal hulls tried to behave like gas or liquid. Most disturbing part was how routine it all seemed to the humans. They chatted about weekend plans while erasing existential threats from reality. Someone mentioned needing to pick up groceries after the battle. Another human complained about paperwork they had to finish. "Admiral Evans," Captain Miller called. "Out. We're getting some stragglers trying to escape into hyperspace. Should we let them go or clean up the whole mess?" "Might as well finish the job," Admiral Chris Evans replied. "Can't have these things reproducing somewhere else and becoming someone else's problem." What happened next broke Admiral Kexthara's understanding of what was possible. The human fleet activated something that reached across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Every Devourer ship, whether in normal space or trying to escape through hyperspace, suddenly found itself trapped in an inescapable bubble of altered reality. "Reality cage is active," reported Lieutenant Tom Wilson from the human science vessel Discovery. "All enemy units are locked in normal space-time. No escape. Routes available." The final phase of the battle was almost anticlimactic. The remaining Devourer ships, stripped of their ability to replicate, escape, or coordinate, were systematically eliminated by weapons that treated the fundamental forces of the universe like tools in a workshop in less than an hour. That had consumed entire sectors of the galaxy was completely gone. It's not destroyed in any conventional sense, but erased so thoroughly that the universe itself seemed to have forgotten they ever existed. That was refreshing, Captain Rogers said as the last enemy signals vanished from sensors. "Haven't had a good swarm cleanup in months. Really gets the blood flowing." "All ships report status," Admiral Evans called out, relentless, reporting all green. "No damage, no casualties. Reality is still stable in our sector. Discovery showing normal readings. The quantum flux is back to baseline levels. Lucky strike here. Everything looks good. My coffee didn't even get cold." Admiral Kexthera listened to the casual status reports in stunned silence. The humans had just eliminated the greatest threat in galactic history, and they were treating it like a successful training exercise. "Admiral Kexthara," Admiral Evans called out, Sorry about the fireworks. Hope none of our weapons affected your ships. Space-time should be back to normal in a few hours. Admiral Evans Kexthera managed to say. How is this possible? Devourers have destroyed hundreds of worlds. They were unstoppable. Oh, they weren't that tough, Evans replied, matter-of-factly. Pretty standard self-replicating swarm. We've dealt with worse, much worse. Worse than the Devourers. There was a pause before Admiral Evans answered, and when he did, his voice carried a weight that made every Zephyrian on the bridge feel very small and very young. Admiral, the Devourers were just machines following their programming. Out there, in the dark between galaxies, there are things that make the Devourers look like children's toys. Things that eat stars for breakfast and use black holes as weapons. Things that exist in dimensions we can barely imagine, waiting for any sign of weakness in our defenses. Captain Miller's voice joined the conversation, equally serious now. We didn't develop our technology for conquest or glory, Admiral. We developed it because there are monsters in the deep dark that make your worst nightmares seem like bedtime stories. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and somebody has to keep the lights on. But why? Admiral Kexthera asked. Why do you protect civilizations that cannot even comprehend the threats you face? Admiral Evans was quiet for a long moment before answering, because that's what good neighbors do. We have the power to help, so we help. It's as simple as that. The human fleet began to disperse, returning to their normal patrols and duties, as if they had just finished routine maintenance, rather than saving galactic civilization. Captain Rogers' cheerful voice came over the radio one last time.
Admiral?
Kexthara, you and your people are welcome to stay in our space as long as you need. We've got plenty of room, and it's always nice to have new neighbors. Just remember to register your ships with traffic control, and try not to park in the shipping lanes. As the human ships departed, Admiral Kexthara finally understood why they had laughed at his fleet. It wasn't arrogance or mockery. It was the gentle amusement of adults watching children play with toy weapons. Completely unaware of the real dangers that the grown-ups dealt with every day, the humans weren't impressed by the Zephyrian fleet because they spent their lives standing guard against horrors that lived in the spaces between reality itself. Everything else, no matter how advanced or threatening it seemed, was just background noise to beings who had made themselves the galaxy's quiet protectors. In the end, the Zephyrians learned the most important lesson of their long journey. Sometimes, the most dangerous beings in the universe are the ones who never brag about their power, because they're too busy using it to keep everyone else safe.